what would make you decide to run for President of the United States?
Well, right now I'm only focused on the midterms. I believe that the Republicans have not done what they should have done in terms of providing some counterbalance to the executive branch, which is what the Founding Fathers planned, and also not tackling the big issues, guns and climate change and income inequality and immigration in a sound way. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. And then afterwards, you take a look at it. I care very much about this country. As you know, I've devoted my life and all my net worth to trying to make the world a better place, because I think that's the best thing I can do for my kids and my grandkids. And we'd see whether or not it's possible and how I feel, but that's down the road. You got to take these things one at a time. Everybody's focused now on the midterms, at least they think they are, and they should be. And then afterwards, there's lots of possibilities, lots of things you can do in the world. I have lots of ways to make a difference. We've been doing that through the foundation and the company and my personal life. And it is a very heady thing when people yell, "Run, run, run." Anybody that thinks it isn't should see a shrink.
You know the case against the Bloomberg presidency because you've made it several times, both privately and publicly. You're a short Jewish billionaire who is pro-choice and anti-guns, you often said. So,
well, what I did say was, I said that a New York billionaire would never be elected president of the United States. And unless you believe Wilbur Ross's accounting, maybe that's still true.
You think you have a shot if you were to decide to do it?
I don't know. That's up to the public to decide. I can just tell you I've never been shy about what I believe. I got elected mayor by not asking people where they wanted to go and then following them there. I got elected because I said, these are the policies I think we should have, and here's why, and follow me. And that was for 3 elections. People seem to be very happy with what the city did in 12 years. And I think you can do that at a federal level. It requires being able to put together people who are not in the paper every day for scandals, but people who are experts in their field. And that you delegate to them and let them do some things, and the CEO's job is to make sure they work together and compensate them and attract them and adjudicate issues. But I think you can do that, and I think I've always believed that Americans respect people who say what they believe, even if they don't agree with them. And my experience of going around New York with, New York is a strange city. We have more embassies than any other city in the world. We have a police department that's roughly the 6th biggest army in the world. We have a budget that's bigger than the GDP of half the countries in the world. We have every ethnicity and every level of education and experience and everything here in the city. And for 12 years, I went around, and there were lots of people that said to me, I don't like what you're doing in this. And I said, okay, I hear you. Let me explain why. Let me listen to you, and walk away. And I believe that I got their votes. And I'll never forget the first time I was campaigning, the first day, this nice elderly woman comes up to me on the street corner and says, "Oh, I'm so glad you're running. I'm going to vote for you. All my friends are going to vote for you." And I figured, this first day, I got this. This is easy. And then she looked up at me, and with a really earnest, she said, "And I'm so glad you're pro-life." And I remember for a billionth of a second, what do you say? But instantly I said, "I'm sorry, I believe in a woman's right to choose. I'm not in favor of abortion. I don't think anybody is. But when somebody's got to make a decision, that's where I come out. No ifs, ands, buts about it. And I hope that you will still like the other things I stand for." And she said, smiled, "Thank you," and she walked away. I would bet, there's no ways to find out, but I'd bet you anything that I got her vote, because she walked away when she thought about it. Well, I don't agree with him, but at least he's honest.
So let's talk about the midterms. You wrote in one of your pieces, you were worried that the Democrats might jump too strongly on the impeachment issue.
Yes.
Do you mean by that if the Democrats take the House, they should not impeach Donald Trump?
I think you have to wait and see what the investigations that are going on now, Mueller et al., what they arrive at. But it is true, I think, that you don't want to do things that will have an effect that you didn't count on. And clearly, if the Democrats try to impeach Donald Trump, it will energize his base as well as their base. And whether or not that's a good thing, the country needs to have Donald Trump change some of his policies and do the things that I think are right in a ways that's much more respectful of people. And I've certainly said my piece about the Trump presidency, but we want him to be a good president. And people say, oh, no, I hate the guy. You have a right, when it comes the next election, vote for somebody else. But the public spoke, and we should find a ways to make it, that government, function in a ways that benefits us all. And certainly he's not done the things that I think he should be doing. I disagree with him on almost everything, but I still think we should find a ways to get both sides of the aisle to work together. I said to Nancy Pelosi the other day when I was in San Francisco, if the Democrats get control of the House, I would expect her and the Democrats to do what I'm claiming the Republicans should be doing. And I will hold their feet to the fire in the same ways. Every time the out party always says the other party's not willing to compromise, but when they become the majority, they do exactly the same thing. The world is too complex today. Things happen too fast. It's between science and politics and communications and transportation, all of these things, we can no longer do business that way. We have to work together.
You have been consistently critical of Donald Trump from the
well, not of him. I've been consistently critical of his administration. I try not to make it personal because that just takes away from the fact that I disagree with his policies, and I certainly disagree with the way he approaches problems. There is a lack of civility and of openness and honesty that I find distasteful and I think is very bad for the country. But rather than make it around one person, I would rather talk about the administration, because it's not just him, and the policies that I disagree with rather than the personality.
But I wanted to ask you about that, because when I think about that speech you gave at the Democratic Convention, which was very tough, is the problem with Donald Trump his character or his policies or both?
I think both. I disagree with most of his policies, and I certainly disagree with the way he has tried to implement or initiate his policies. For example, I think it is very fair to say that China has not been as open to us as we've been open to them. It is asymmetrical. We should not tolerate that. But the ways to affect change is not to go and take the other side of the argument, the person on the other side of the argument, and put them in a situation where they can't cave. You cannot go and embarrass the other side. You always want to walk away from a negotiation where both of you can think you won. Not everything you wanted, but you won something. I think that's true in a marriage. I think that is true in business. I think it's true in government. Human beings want recognition and respect, and if you don't give it to them, then they can't compromise and help you with the policy side. So it is the policies I disagree with, but it's also the style and the walking away from science and walking away from history and walking away from everything that this country has done over the years. You say, make America great again. People, when they vote with their feet, still come here. And you want to make sure they continue to come here. I cannot tell you America's done everything right every time. We've had some disgraceful things like slavery in the history of our country. But having said, putting the Japanese into camps during World War II, nevertheless, every country has problems, and I'm still very proud of what this country has done, and I think it continued to do more. But it does mean reaching out and helping, being the world's conscience is a very good thing, not a bad thing.
Much more with former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg when we come back. What would a President Bloomberg do when watching this business with Kavanaugh? Do you think the Senate should vote? Do you think it should wait? Should the FBI investigate? How would you handle this?
You are considering the character and the abilities of somebody who is going to have a job for life. There is no rush whatsoever. There's no argument that says we should do anything other than investigate everything. I think on balance today, I would not vote for Kavanaugh's approval, whatever the term is. I think I'm too worried about Roe v. Wade. I'm too worried about some of his more extreme views on the First Amendment. But the question you asked as to whether or not Congress should do it, look, the president has a right to appoint anybody he wants. If you wanted somebody different, you should have voted for a different president. So he's there, and Congress has a responsibility to do a thorough investigation, if that's the right word, or discussions on vetting him and making sure that he's the right person. If I were a senator, I would, at this point, given what I know, vote no. But that's not the issue here. The issue is, should they wait to find out whether this allegation is true or not? And you can't just all of a sudden come out and say, okay, you got 3 days to do it. Now, why this didn't come out before, you can make that argument. Nevertheless, it came out when it came out. It deserves to have a fair hearing, and that's hard to do in a rush given people's careers and reputations and emotions are on the line. No reason to rush whatsoever.
You wrote a piece against the tax cut. I was struck by how strongly you came out against it. Explain, because a lot of businessmen say it's a good idea. What was your concern?
What I came out against, I thought cutting taxes on companies made sense because we want them to be able to compete around the world, and they were at a disadvantage. Giving a tax break to the wealthy individuals, including me, there's no excuse to do that whatsoever, and that was the money that we really need to improve, revamp, expand our infrastructure. The infrastructure in this country, roads and bridges and air traffic control, you go right down the list, the infrastructure is falling apart. There's places where we don't have good communication, cell service and Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. There's all sorts of things that we really need if we are going to compete around the world and have a better life for ourselves. We've got to make sure everybody in America has access to services, can get around, all of those kinds of things. And that compared to giving a bunch of wealthy people a tax break when America's taxes are lower than on individuals than most places around the world doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
You used to say that anyone with a PhD or an advanced degree in science should get his diploma or her diploma with a green card stapled to it.
Sure, I mean, you really want all these businesses started overseas? We are actually walking away from some of these businesses. They're starting elsewhere. The Chinese are starting to make chips. I saw a story in the paper today that there's another company making AI chips which will compete with America. We have to have trade and we have to have open borders. The open borders is to get people to come here and create their companies here. The trade is to let us buy products from around the world and sell our products around the world. And we can have restrictions on what we sell and whether there are tariffs on some of them. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But it has to be a balanced thing that you've thought out and negotiated with the other side over the years. So, for example, with China, I think we should have put a lot of pressure on them to open their markets to us so we can start businesses there and they can buy our products. But at the same time, having a trade war makes no sense at all because we'll put tariffs on our products. The American public will pay for that, and we exempt certain things. Well, the Chinese government, they see the list of what you exempt. They know those are the ones you care about. So they'll put duties the other side. I mean, it just trade wars, you don't win. I don't know how many times we have to go and say that. It's like the Laffer curve. It just doesn't work. Enough. Let's stop the voodoo economics and do something serious here.
More of my interview with former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg when we come back. You've built one of the most successful companies in the world. By any standard, you're a very, very successful CEO. When you watch Donald Trump as the chief executive of this country, and you read the Bob Woodward book or you hear, what is your sense of his management style, his leadership style?
Well, as I said before, I don't like to make things personal, but I certainly disagree with the ways he has conducted himself. I don't think you hire and fire people. This is not a reality TV show. I don't think you try to do everything yourself. You have to delegate. I don't think you undercut your people when you send them out to say one thing and then the next day say something else. I don't think you make policy and converse with the public in tweets all of a sudden just because somebody saw something on television, you got an idea, and it becomes... The president has to understand that his word is not just the word of another one out of 330 million Americans. He's the president of the United States, and when he says something, it has meaning. We have some employees of my company who've come to me and said, we're not welcome in this country. They were from overseas. Can I move to another Bloomberg office? And we actually had the same thing in London. We've had some people say that we're not welcome in that country. They want to stay with the company, but they would prefer to work someplace else. Words have meanings, and that's very tragic. That these words are not to the standard that you and I were taught.
You've been very active on global warming.
Yes.
It's something that not a lot of people, when I think of the world you come out of, big business and things like that, there aren't as many people as active. Why is this such a passion for you?
I think global warming has two things. One, it can hurt the environment today. So the water you drink or the lack of water to drink, the foods that you have or the lack of food or the different kinds of food that you no longer can have and have to settle for, all the environmental stuff. Today, kids go to hospitals with asthma because there's stuff in the air. You get stomach cancer because the water's not pure. You can't get to work, and so you don't start a new business, or our economy slows down. The same things are the things that cause climate change longer term. And long term, the science says, and there's some evidence it's happening, that once you get going, it's very hard to stop the world from continuing to get warm. Why? Well, if the ice caps melt, the ice caps are white. White reflects off heat back from the sun out into the atmosphere. If they're not there, the Earth absorbs it. If the Earth absorbs it and temperatures go up, then the tundra in Russia melts and all the methane, which is really bad, comes out. I mean, these things go one after another. So we've seen storms more frequent, and you saw one in the Carolinas, and more violent than history. 17 of the 18th hottest years on record have been since the year 2000. We only missed one. You take a look, there are droughts, plenty of places where the farmers don't have water. Crops that they used to grow, they have to switch to different crops because it's warmer. The fish are in different places. Maine lobsters are no longer in Maine, they're further north now, and they used to be in Chesapeake Bay. The world reacts to these things. You go out in the Rockies and you'll see these swaths of trees all brown, they're dead. Why? Because the winters aren't cold enough to kill the beetles that normally kept the population down. There are lots of things, forest fires. You just go on and on and on, and these things are causing us pain today, and if it continues and gets worse, who knows where that lands. There's a theory that it eventually kills everybody. I don't know whether that's true, but I know if one scientist with peer review says it's possible, I think we should take some prophylactic action, because God forbid it is true, and later on it might be too late.
Bloomberg is putting together this global business forum.
Sure.
Very ambitious, heads of state, heads of government, CEOs. We're living through a great deal of skepticism about kind of these elites meeting. What do you hope to accomplish with it?
Well, government worries about war and peace and things like that. Businesses worry about the economy. And their access to consumers around the world and the supply chains of materials that let them build products and sell services. Business and government, they don't meet in a ways that is productive. They don't get to know each other well. It's their lobbyists that talk to lobbyists. You want to have ways that business people can get on a first name basis to express themselves and their views, and that government understands them. Everybody wants recognition, respect, whether you're in government or you're in business. It's all the same. The recognition may come in different form. In business, it typically comes in monetary compensation, in Teaching, if you become a 5th grade teacher, I can't tell you you're likely to be a billionaire, but you do have a chance of educating some young child who goes on to cure cancer. I mean, what could be more satisfying than that? So there are lots of different ways you can contribute and have a good life and respect from your family and like what you see in a mirror. We've got to get more people talking together, and that's what a short forum where it's not so long that they get pulled away from their day jobs, both the government people and the business people, but a chance to meet each other, a chance to meet the other side, a chance to understand each other and have a dialogue. As long as you're talking, you don't fight. And that's the lesson, I think, of the EU and its predecessors in Europe. We went World War I to World War II, 20 years to another war. We've gone 70 years without a war. That's the lesson of the United Nations. I don't like a lot of things that are said in the United Nations, but if you keep talking, generally you don't fight. That's not 100% true, but we have built something here, a civility and a dialogue in the world that America's been a very big part of, and it would be tragic to throw it away.
Mike Bloomberg, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me. All the best.